Seeing that it is 6:30, I'm calling this meeting to order of the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District. We begin our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I know that there's a Boy Scout that later in the meeting we're going to honor. And I'm wondering if he's here right now.
I've got a flag here, if anybody needs.
Oh, good. Caden Silver, are you on this call? Not seeing Caden and looking for an Eagle Scout. Oh, Caden, is that you? All right, not seeing Caden on the call. Josh, is a Eagle Scout yourself? Will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure, I can do that. Well, if everybody will please stand.
There it is.
And repeat after me.
To the
Hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To all of our guests, welcome to our meeting tonight. I'm going to tell you briefly about the agenda so you'll know which part you might fit into. We're going to take a roll of this meeting, and then we're going to do public statements for items not on the agenda. If it is an item on the agenda, that's going to come up a little bit later in the meeting. But Gina, will you call the roll of the Board of Directors?
Director Abela?
Here.
Director Freeman?
Here.
Director Gray?
Here.
Vice Chair O'Brien?
Here.
And Chair Dennert?
Here. The District Manager, Dan, do you have any items for agenda review?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Dan Pernick, District Manager. Staff did distribute a photo of a sign that we expect to be spoken to during the public comment portion of the meeting. That's all.
That brings us to public statements for items not on the agenda. I'm sorry, yes, public statements for items not on the agenda. I'm going to call on some people that I know were here for that, and then I'll see if there's anybody else. Amy?
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
So you just told me, is it my turn now? Okay.
You have 3 minutes.
So I often take my dog to the Rancho Santa Susana Park over there on Los Angeles Stearns. And there's several softball fields, and there's these two guys in particular who go there and they hit the softballs. They're really good softball hitters because they hit these balls way over the fence. And they, at a time I've been there and there's been, literally 40 balls outside the fence, and they hit them from really high. So when you could be walking and they'll come and they'll hit right down next to you with a lot of force. And it goes into the walk area and the picnic area where there's tables and chairs in the walk area where people are walking. And it also goes into the parking lot where cars are. And it's a little startling. I don't walk when they're there. I don't walk my dog in that area now because I don't want to get hit by a softball. And it's a little startling and scary. And so there's no signs there that say, like, watch for fly balls. I'm not a softball player. I wouldn't assume that balls are going over the fence. So that's why I sent that picture. If you can see, there's nothing on that sign that says anything about fly balls. It does say, don't, and number 3 says, do not engage in conduct which is or could be harmful or hazardous to any person or property. So fly balls could be harmful and hazardous if that hit a child in the head, and it could be dangerous. And so it's my concern for public safety about that, whether there should be a net put up like they do with golf balls, or another sign that's really obvious. Like you can see there's a big no smoking sign underneath that regular park rules sign. If there was another black and white sign or something that said, watch for fly balls, don't walk in this area, if there's someone, hitting balls, something to bring it to people's attention, or find these guys. The rangers say that these guys are really belligerent and they've talked to them many, many times and they just keep coming back. So find them, because most people aren't hitting the balls like these two guys are. And the ranger knows all about the situation. So I'm just bringing it to the board's attention because it seems really dangerous.
Amy, thank you. So what we're going to do is, as a board, we don't discuss it right now because it's public comment, but I'm going to have staff follow up with you and follow up with us on what they've chosen to do. And if the actions don't solve that problem, then it could come to the board as a policy, like which policy to create.
Okay,
But thanks for coming out tonight.
thank you very much.
More public comments. Rich, lead us.
It's so good.
Thank you, Ryan. My name is Rich Leadus. I'm the Royal High School girls golf coach. And I really just wanted to say a thank you to the park board for the continued use of the golf courses over the years. And I appreciate the flexibility of the staff at Simi Hills and Sinaloa and all the efforts they do to really make it a positive experience for our kids as we continue to grow the game of golf. And it's more of just a kind of a compliment and appreciation as, you know, we're really excited that our season's actually going to get to play. You know, high school sports officially in our city started today with a cross country meet, and golf will be able to go off really COVID-wise without a hitch. But it was more just a public comment in terms of thank you for the continued efforts by the park board and your accommodations, and thank you to the staff of both golf courses to continue making it a positive experience for the kids of Simi Valley.
Thank you, Rich. Now for other people with public comments for items not on the agenda, we don't have a specific order, but Chris, I believe that maybe why you're here, is that correct? Visage, I believe you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, perfect. All right, so the reason for the call is just directed at the board. I wanted the board to take into consideration, I'm the vice president of Simi Youth Baseball. I've been on the board for 6 years. Obviously, we've had a lot of challenges this past year, as a lot of organizations have. For 30 plus years, we've been a community partner with Parks and Rec, and we have the facility at the Sinaloa ball fields as well as the Knowles Senesu Park and the Knowles Park. And speaking with a lot of the different leagues, we all have similar challenges. We all have challenges in the fact that the expenses that we have every month, I don't know what their fees are or what they're spending every month. But my thought tonight, or my hope tonight, is that the board would take into consideration either a pause on the fees that we have this year, or a reduction or something to help us out, because we haven't had an income, nor have any of the leagues, in over a year. And we also, all of us, I know we did, I don't know the rest of them, but most of us, I think, offered refunds, as well as our schedule this year has provisions for further refunds, as well as discounted rates this year. So we're not exactly sure when we're going to get back to it, or when we're going to actually have an income. Every month we have $5,000 to $7,000 worth of expenses to continue to maintain those fields. That's our irrigation, that's our landscaping fees, that's electrical fees. We have $1,000 a month electrical bill, despite being closed, because of the irrigation pumps and the refrigerators and the lighting and that sort of thing that's down there, as well as the trash. We have to continue with trash because of the continued cutting of the grass. The grass grows, you have to cut it typically twice a week. And then we've had to put, after these windstorms and the rain, we've had to recently put another $30,000 back into these fields to replace some of the bleacher covers, the roof on the snack bar, roofs on the bleacher covers, as well as upgrading some of the equipment that has failed, that's failed over the course of us being closed. So again, I'd like the Parks Board to take serious consideration in taking a look at the fees that us leagues have to pay to utilize these facilities, until we can get back on our feet and recoup some of these fees. And so right now, basically everything's going out. We got no positive income, and we have no positive income in the foreseeable future. So again, I appreciate you guys letting me talk. If you have any questions, let me know. I know I've spoken to a lot of you, and this isn't a far reach from left field, just asking for freebies. We really are desperate, and again, we have no income, so we're trying to find ways to keep our facilities going, keep them maintained, and to provide a positive experience for the rest of our community, and with the hopes that we do end up having a spring season this year. We're having to make a lot of provisions and a lot of changes, and we're all crossing our fingers that we get to have these kids back out on the field shortly.
So during public comments, we don't have extended discussions, but just a quick question. How many volunteers would you say your organization has?
I believe right now we have 28 board members, but that, the volunteers far exceed what we have as far as board members, just from parents that help out and that sort of thing. Just little stuff here and there. They can help shovel, dig holes, paint, that sort of thing.
And I see that you're calling in either from work or from volunteering at softball, baseball, but.
Yeah, I'm at practice right now with the kids.
I'm impressed you found a way to participate, so I like that.
No.
Ed, were you about to say something?
Yeah, if I could just make a brief comment. Chris, I first of all, I think how much respect I have for you and what a great job you do with CMU Youth Baseball and then the respect I have for all the youth baseball and softball leagues locally. And so we're always going to take into consideration when you make a request like that. I think everybody should understand though too, as a park district, it hasn't been easy for us either. We've been subject to the same shutdown rules that everyone else has, and so it hasn't really always been a positive income flow for us either. And it's taken everything we can just to do what we can legally do in terms of keeping our parks and trails and golf courses open safely. So I just want to say I appreciate everything you're saying. I appreciate everything you do for youth baseball, but you do need to understand also that we have our own financial considerations as well. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys understand that we do hear you, but you got to understand where we're coming from too.
Chris, was there another person from your organization on the Zoom call tonight?
Yeah, I'm actually on there.
Ty.
I'm on the call. I'm Ty Hansen. I'm the president of the league.
Yes. Can you identify? Can you say your name one more time?
Yeah, it's Ty Hansen. I'm the president of CMU Youth Baseball.
Go ahead,
I've been
Ty,
on our board I've been on the board for 16 years. And, to reiterate what Chris says, we are completely self-sufficient, meaning we do not rely on Park and Rec to really do much of anything with our complex. And, throughout the years, you guys have helped out with, some of our expenses. Back 10 years ago, you guys sunk, close to $80,000 into our complex because we had the World Series. And you guys decided, hey, we need to make this a big event. We still host that World Series today. We have 16 teams that come throughout Southern California. They stay here all week. They spend money in the community. But, to Chris's point, we pay all of our landscaping fees. We pay our electric. We trim our trees. Occasionally we will ask you, hey, can you piggyback and maybe trim a tree or two? But we really don't ask Park and Rec for much of anything. And, this year, us being self-sufficient, we have lost 100% of our income for the year. And we have given it back. We've given credits for the season, and we don't know what that what the year is going to look like. So, my point is I think there should be a little give and take where you guys can, reduce the fees. I don't care if it's by a third or 50%, but I think, from our point of view, we're paying to basically lease a complex that we completely take care of.
Thank you. Is there, because it's public comment, we can't really discuss it at length, but board members at the end of the meeting might share their thoughts. Was there anybody else for public comment for an item not on the agenda? Leah, I do see that you're on this Zoom call. Was it for public comment or for something else?
No, I just came to hang out.
Okay, I like that too. Anybody else? Public comments for items not on the agenda? I'm not seeing anybody with their raised hand or unmuting themselves, so I'm going to move on the agenda to the next item. We're going to move to approval of minutes for our last board meeting, which was February 4th. Is there any discussion about the minutes?
I'll move approval.
A second.
I saw Elaine and then Kate. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Gina, I saw that all 5 board members approved it. That brings us to the consent agenda. Is there anything to discuss on the consent agenda?
I move for approval.
Move to approve.
I see Kate with a motion and Ed seconding it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 5-0 for the consent agenda. That brings us to presentation, scheduled items, and public hearings. Presentation of the part-time employee of the month for January 2021.
Honorable Chair and members of the board, we do have Ryan on the Zoom call with us this evening. Welcome, Ryan. He is the employee of the month for January 2021. Ryan is a golf assistant 1 and has worked at the district for 4.5 years. This is his first employee of the month award. And the person who nominated Ryan stated the following. Ryan Pavich is a golf assistant at Simi Hills Golf Course, where he works in the pro shop and outside services. Ryan is an extremely hard worker who accomplishes every task given to him with ease. He is also willing to go out of his way in order to make sure we have the appropriate coverage when scheduling conflicts occur. For example, Ryan was asked on a Saturday morning to come in at 6 a.m. and without hesitation, he said, "Yes, I can," and proceeded to come into work. Ryan shows natural leadership abilities and will take charge of a task and elevate those around him to a higher working standard. Without being asked, he makes sure fellow employees gain a deeper understanding of the job by reviewing certain duties they may be struggling with. With any situation put in front of him, he always brings a positive and determined attitude that spreads to those that work with him. Ryan was also part of the Boy Scouts, where he served our local community. His hard work and dedication allowed him to receive the highest position and honor by becoming an Eagle Scout. So congratulations, Ryan, on your Employee of the Month award.
We'll go to staff and then board members if they have any comments on that. Any staff members?
Yeah, just real quick, everything Teresa said is true about Ryan. Ryan is a superstar at the golf course. He does so many different things and he always does it with a great attitude, and he's friendly and approachable to customers, and you know, he's really, really effective. I can't tell you how many times he's helped us out in the pinch. And Ryan, I really appreciate everything you do for us. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other staff members or board members?
I'll add my congratulations if no other staff or board is going to say. Congratulations. Thank you for all the work you're doing. And it sounds like you're holding up the name of Eagle Scout quite well. So thank you for that as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Ryan, I want to congratulate you. And if you heard earlier, Rich Leadus, who's a teacher at Royal High School and a coach, he thanked the staff of the golf courses. So Brian Reed, you run a good team.
Yeah, thank you. I did catch that, and thanks, Rich. If you're still on, I do appreciate that. That was very, very kind of him.
And I'm using the reaction button for clapping just to figure out how Gina puts it into the minutes for the next meeting. But congratulations again, Ryan. That brings us to our next item, a presentation to Eagle Scout Caden Silver. Is Caden here? I'm only going to briefly mention that he completed a service project of trail markers on a trail, and maybe he'll come to a future meeting, or maybe we'll mail him the award.
Yeah.
That brings us to certificates for the presentation for the MLK Day of Service. Dan, do you introduce that, or do I?
Sorry, Chair, that would be in your purview, and you can run with the item.
Go ahead and introduce it.
I can go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, we wanted to acknowledge everyone that participated, families, individuals, children, for the first inaugural MLK event. So we have, you should have received some certificates in the mail already. We just wanted to acknowledge all the hard work that you all put together. Definitely made a difference and appearance that'll last for years at all of the individual parks that we had everybody at. all the painting, obviously the signposts and the cleanup that we had. A bunch of wood chips definitely was needed over at Rancho Santa Su. I wanted to, I know we have, is it Dawn? Dawn, you're there, right? There you are. Hey, Dawn. Dawn and her kids, it was at Ty and Cora, right? Okay. Do you want to unmute yourself?
There you go.
There you go. So Dawn was over at our one of our parks at Corriganville, correct?
Right.
All right. We want to appreciate, we just want to say thank you for attending. Hopefully you can attend in the next events that we possibly have in the near future. And hopefully you got your certificate in the mail.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, good.
We got it. I really appreciate you guys putting this together. It's not often that there's a volunteer opportunity for kids. Usually it's teenagers and above. So it was really nice to be able to involve my younger kids in a project.
Dawn, our goal is that you return next year and that they could serve with you every year.
They will. We'll be there.
Thank you, Dawn. And Kim, are you on? Kim May?
I do not see her,
Don't see
but I
Kim.
do see Debbie.
Okay.
But
Or Sophia.
Debbie Shackelford, right?
Yes. So
Debbie,
Debbie,
can you tell us a little bit about the project that you did or where you worked?
Hi. So we had to like lay a bunch of wood chips, like
in the front planter, in front of the Santa Susana location on Los Angeles Avenue. And then we did that project, and then we painted the letters in the front on with the yellow paint.
And have you returned to that park since you've done that project?
We have actually, and driven by, walked around, and it's nice to see that we didn't do a horrible job.
Well, thank you. And
yeah,
then,
we
Laura, do you
appreciate
see anybody
the
else?
sign in the front there. The yellow paint is definitely, it made its appearance again. Thank you. And then is Nicole on? Let's see here. I see Jean Ironhill. Hey, did you want to mute yourself? You were over at Rancho Santa Su as well, correct?
Yes, with my son Nolan, who is in a separate Zoom.
Yeah. Oh,
He's
right
on.
there. Yeah, I'm on the East Coast today, so.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you. Obviously, hopefully you got the certificate in the mail as well. Nolan, I know you were very intense working on the sign over at Rancho Santa Su, correct? Yeah. All right.
And I know there was a few other
else.
people that couldn't make it, but was there anybody else that served on that day that is on the call that we did not notice? All right, so we'll go, before we give you a round of applause and all, we're going to go to staff members and board members if they have any comments. Dan, I see you have a comment.
Yeah, Chair, I just wanted to emphasize how important volunteers are to our operation. In running the day-to-day, we have our paid staff and we have 87 full-time staff, and we have about 300 part-time staff, but we also have 600 volunteers that contribute to making us what we are. So it's each of those volunteers and each of the projects we do and their time that they spend making their community better. And it really strengthens, from the staff side, it really strengthens our ability to provide services to the community. So I really appreciate and value the volunteers and the time they spend with us.
Any other staff members?
I did have a comment actually from
Yes.
John DeLuca that couldn't attend. He was the one over at Oak Canyon Community Park in the city of Oak Park. He made a comment that he had an enlightening day spent with us and some other fine people, as he called them, and he will be gladly joining next year to help as a volunteer.
Nice. Ed, I saw that you raised your hand in the lane. Ed, go ahead.
I just want to
Thank
thank
you.
everybody, thank all the volunteers that came out and helped, and it was really great. They are the people's parks, and your participation really helps, really does help. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Ed?
Thank you, Chair Dennert. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things that I said at our last meeting, but we didn't have the volunteers there. First of all, Chair Dennert, again, for coming up with this great idea. The staff for your work on it, and both prior to Martin Luther King Day as well as on the day of service. But most of all, to the volunteers. I recognize a lot of you from Rancho Santa Susana Park, And what I said a couple weeks ago, I'll say again now. Due to circumstances, what we lacked in numbers, we made up for in enthusiasm. I know the volunteers at Rancho Santa Susana Park were really enthusiastic. They did their part. And, Martin Luther King had a lot of ambitious and realistic dreams. And one of the things I mentioned a couple weeks ago, this idea that Chair Dennard came up with, there may be some growing pains, but I envision that 10, 20 years from now, we'll look back on this inaugural one as being a special one and something that got us going. And so I was glad that we were able to get certificates for all the volunteers. We appreciate what you did. I know you probably didn't expect them, but you certainly are deserving both of recognition and the certificates. And hopefully you'll treasure that. And like I say, 10, 20 years ago, you'll remember that you were part of the inaugural Rancho Simi Park District MLK Day of Service. So thank you again, and hats off to the volunteers.
I believe I see a hand up from Nikki. Nikki, were you raising your hand?
Yes, I was. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was over at Oak Canyon Community Park and also at the Deer Hill Park. We had little girls that came up with their mom, just curious about what we were doing, and they were super excited to help out. They got their paintbrushes. They told me they were artists. They stayed with us the whole time, along with Nicole and her children. But we had a really, really great time out there. And I think it was a really positive thing for the community to see. And, a lot of people stopped by just to say that they were so happy that we were doing it, kind of curious about what was going on. So again, Brian, it was a really great idea. The community really enjoyed it. And I'm really glad that I was able to be a part of it, as well as everybody else who participated. So thank you to all the volunteers, because it was really awesome. It was a great day.
Nikki, one of the things that you and I have had a conversation with many times when I come up with an idea is I say, this is just an idea, but the details, I won't mind if you work out the details. And one of those details is Dawn. I didn't come up with the idea of like, let's do it by families. Let's make sure there's projects little kids could do. That came from our staff. I don't know which one of our staff member did that, but Nikki, can you talk to that at all? Like the idea that we included kids? Where'd that come from?
We just wanted to make sure that the community was able to kind of introduce the idea of volunteering to their family, to children, kind of starting up the idea for just a family to get together and do a project. So I think that was, it was under great guidance. Laura definitely helped out with, guiding me in planning the event and kind of just adding really great detail. So yeah, it was just an idea to kind of bring families together.
Well, this is why we listen to the public, is to get ideas and understand, wow, that's important. We should include that in the future. Are there any other board members with comments?
I just want to reiterate what everybody else said. I think it was a great idea. Thank you for thinking of it, Brian. And thank you, Nikki and staff, for working out the details. And I'm looking forward to having us do it every year. And I think it'll get better every time.
Josh?
Yeah, I'm kind of reiterating the same thing. I'm happy to see so many people I saw on MLK Day here. Thank you for coming back. I hope you come back next time we do it too. And thank you, Brian. Thank you, staff. I know it's not always easy, but thank you.
When I look down like this, that means, I'm totally reading from notes. And one reason to read from notes is when you're not prepared. Another reason you read from notes is when you want to make sure to not miss something. So for me, there's a Martin Luther King quote that we're going to have to learn to live together or perish together, because we're in this together. And the quote that guides me in this is, life's most urgent and persistent question is, what are you doing for others? And it feels good. And if this was just a small thing, my goal is that we continue as a tradition, as Ed mentioned, and it's just something that we do every year and families can participate. And maybe you come back next year and maybe we start recognizing how many years people have done it, because I promise you that Wayne has a long list of potential projects and things that need to be fixed. And we appreciate that hope. Martin Luther King provides a selfless example that's timeless, and his challenge to us wasn't just in serving others, but that's one part that we could work on together. And my thought is we have to be able to work on small stuff. And I know it sounds in the grand scheme of things, not important, but when we spread some wood chips or cover up some graffiti or clean up a park, it's not just the work's getting done, but we're doing it together. And if we could at least do the small tasks together, maybe we can move on to the larger problems that we're going to need to deal with. So I'm happy that you're all here tonight. And if there's anyone that we didn't recognize, but you were here tonight, they sent you a certificate. The certificates came out really well. I know that didn't just work because of my virtual background. The certificates came out really well, and I appreciate them. So thank you for everyone that made sure that they were out here tonight.
Thank you.
That brings us to the next item on the agenda. Status of the district's response to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah, Chair and Board, I have a few items to report on. We have not received any complaints from the community regarding our programs or facilities with respect to COVID. I did want to note that we are ramping up. The staff and I have been processing several contracts for fitness and exercise classes, which are allowed mostly in the outdoors. So I'm continually adding contractors and staff activity to provide those services. I wanted to note as it relates to that with these types of things, as we get the contractors on board and we're able to go back indoors, we'll be ready to go indoors. We'll just transfer those outdoor activities to the indoors. So it's a step one, but it also facilitates step two in the reopening process. I also want to note that our outdoor facility and field activity and the rentals associated with that are alive and well, and those continue to ramp up. A lot of the sports leagues are out there practicing and very active on the fields. I'm sure all of you have seen it, and a lot of folks are using our space, and the level of rentals are ramping up as well. January financials. Yesterday we completed our January financials and I reviewed that with staff. We're still holding the line relative to our lost revenue and our expenditure adjustments we've made. So everything's on track. I did want to note that when we built this year's budget, we did make some assumptions on when we may be able to reopen. So when we made the assumptions back in May, when we built the budget in June, we made some assumptions that we'd be able to start opening in January. That is coming true on some of the field activity and the rentals and some of our classes. But in order to meet our end of year revenue and expenditure goals, we'll have to see that continuing reopening that we had projected when we built the budget. That being said, if we don't entirely meet those numbers, we do have safeguards in place to make sure that we will end the year in a strong financial position, or at least not strong, but at least in a neutral financial position. And then finally, relative to moving into the next tier, from purple to pink, and when we move from purple to pink, there's another transition into opening more facilities and programs. Right now, the county, a few weeks ago, one of the key indicators is what they call the 7-day average case rate per 100,000 people. So the county a few weeks ago was at 41. Today it's at 26.2. And in order to go to pink, which is kind of the bad news here, you have to be at 7 for 7 days. So we were at 41, it is dropping, it's at 26 now, and in order to go to pink, it's got to be at 7. The county hasn't made any predictions on when we will get to 7, but we are headed in the right direction, and I'll keep the board apprised of that. With that, that is my update for COVID, and be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from board members? Josh?
I know you mentioned, or I just want to clarify, have there been any new positive cases among staff since we last met, or among after school programs or programs where we're taking?
Yes, we've had one new case of a staff member in the maintenance area, and it was determined that was an external exposure, not internal. But we did have one additional person with it since we last met who tested positive.
Has there been enough time between whenever that positive came that we know it hasn't spread amongst coworkers in that time? Do we
Yeah,
know?
Josh, we have a protocol we follow. So when somebody tests positive, we go through an exercise and following the county public health criteria, we talk to the employee and the coworkers to see what the exposure timeframes are with coworkers. So yeah, we follow that strictly, and I don't think there was any other concern for exposure with this particular employee. Teresa can elaborate if she'd like.
Yeah, I just figured it could have been the day after we last met, or it could have been yesterday, so we may not know the.
Yeah, I'll have Teresa elaborate a little bit if she could.
Right, we were just found out this week of the exposure, and we do contact tracing each time we're made aware of this. And there was no contact with other employees, so that the person is being quarantined now.
Okay, thank
Josh,
you.
any other questions?
None that spring to mind at the moment.
Dan had a question about a mask. Do we have a supply of masks for employees, and how do we distribute those, and including for our after school workers?
Yes, we do, and I'll defer to Teresa and Wayne on that particular question.
We do have a supply of masks, and we've offered reimbursements to employees if they choose to buy a certain style or something on their own. We've reimbursed up to $10 for masks, and then provided the disposable ones at no charge. So those are all available to all employees. And
The reason I ask is there's obviously a variety of quality of masks, and I understand that we have some, I believe it was KN95s. Is that something like that we've recently made sure after school workers know they have access to? Like, I know we did it in the past, but some after school workers might have been told about months ago, and now they're more likely to want it if we offer it.
Yes, I did offer a supply to After School Club. I checked with Richard. He said that they are well supplied and didn't need any of the inventory that we had here at the office.
And Wayne, I think you were about to speak.
Well, just going to say thanks to Teresa and the generosity of the Chamber of Commerce, we got 60,000 KN95 masks. I think that was an error. I think we we're supposed to get 6,000, but they gave us 6 cases. We have them in the back. We do distribute them. Anybody who wants them, they're more than welcome. They come in packages of 10. They look like they've come from the United States Navy Reserve because they're in little gray envelopes. They're pretty good masks. So if the board needs any, or if any staff needs them, just ask Robert or Casey and they'll get them to you.
And we did pass them out to office staff as well.
Sharon, if I could, I see Danielle is on, or Laura could comment on the after school club mask availability specifically. Danielle or Laura?
Good evening. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Yes.
So I know that we gave them out months ago, but I just mean, like, now that we have 60,000, as Wayne mentioned, would they know if they walked in, there's like a box at each after school club?
Yes, our staff are aware that they have access to those masks. We also, again, as Teresa mentioned, we did reimburse any staff, and we provided them with a cloth mask in the beginning of COVID as well. And we do actually have kid-sized disposable ones at the sites as well, just in case there's kids who have a problem with the mask that they're brought, or if they forgot one in the morning, then we don't have to send the parent home to get it. So we have that precaution as well, that we got the child size.
Thank you.
Welcome.
My next statement is, when we talk about essential workers, it's essential that we are able to do our jobs as a park district, including we keep bathrooms open for the public. Some of those bathrooms are used by people that don't have a home. And some of those bathrooms are used by workers who are far away from their home. So as an example, a delivery truck driver, there's a lot of times where a public bathroom is needed for them. They need to wash up, go to the bathroom, and also maybe rest in the park between shifts or on their lunch break. So to do these essential tasks, it's really important that we keep each other safe as much as possible. And I'm not talking about staff members, because I know they've been doing a good job of that. But as a board member, that's one of the reasons I keep asking about this, is because we're trying to do our essential task, we have to make sure there's not an outbreak, because we don't want any of these things to close, the things that we do have. So if you see me using a large amount of hand sanitizer, or making sure I have a KN95 mask and staying more than 6 feet away talking to somebody, It's so I can protect you so you can do that essential job for the public. Are there any other questions from board members about the COVID response? All right, that brings us to continued business, and there's none, which brings us to new business, consideration and direction regarding possible Earth Day activities.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Dennard and board. We have a request that was brought to the board on January 21st by Chair Dennard, requesting the board to discuss and consider the idea of implementing possibly additional Earth Day activities. Earth Day has been celebrated since 1970. It's giving you a brief overview, and it remains the same throughout the entire world. So staff is recommending the board to possibly discuss and provide direction of possible Earth Day activities. If the staff can provide some ideas for board consideration if desired.
Chair, if I could. We've had a few discussions regarding potential activities or special events for different items. I might suggest and recommend that in order to frame that discussion so it goes a little bit better amongst all of us, is considering special events in a few categories. And I would call a level, I'm going to propose 3 levels of different types of the scope and nature of what we're talking about. So I'd call level 1 activities, special event activities. That would be things like the pollinator event we did, the medallion hunt, the story walk. So those are kind of lower level things that we can facilitate within our day-to-day jobs. And I would call them more activities that are tied to potentially a special event or a day that we want to celebrate. Level 2, I would describe as an event that probably takes a little bit more planning and a little bit more staff time and may actually involve staff being on site at a location for the special event. Some of those types of things that I would consider to be a level 2 would be like Aquapalooza, Eat, Learn, and Play, our dive-in movie nights, family movies, junk in the trunk, those type of events that may take staff a couple of weeks to plan. And it may be a one-day event or a half-a-day event that takes, a moderate level of staff effort. And then the third level of event that I would describe to facilitate the discussion would be a full-on special event. Those would be things like our Halloween event, our concerts in the park, our Easter egg hunts, our Snowfest event. So as we discuss these events and what the board is interested in potentially doing, if we could kind of frame it in those 3 areas, and then once we kind of hone that, we can provide some ideas. So with that, just a suggestion for the board to facilitate the discussion. And with that, I'll turn it over to the board to discuss the matter.
Before we go to board member discussion, is there anyone from the public that has a public comment on this item? Dan?
I'm sorry, Chair, I wanted to mention one more thing is we have had Earth Day events in the city in the past. The city used to sponsor what it called the Living Green Expo, and that was held at different locations, but most recently at the mall. And I wanted to note that the Earth Day concept is broader than just the Park District. It involves, sustainable building practices. It involves, reusable materials and all of those things. So in the past, when the city held that event, it involved a whole bunch of folks, waste management, businesses, vendors. It covered residential and all of those things. And the city did that. That transitioned over time into the Chamber of Commerce, I think, did it for a year or 2 and maybe a little bit longer, where they hosted the Living Green Expo. And then most recently, neither the city or the chamber have done that event in the recent past, nor I think they have a plan to do it in the future. So just a little bit background on the Earth Day and the Living Green Expo in the city.
Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on this issue? Not seeing any, we're going to go to board members' questions and comments.
My question is, our staff has certain regular events and they've planned it into their schedule. Would this cause any disruption in those plans or cause too many events to be planned for our staff?
It depends on the level that we are doing. If it's a level 1, we could probably do that within our existing. If we're talking about a level 3 event, I'd have to evaluate the amount of staff effort and time against other events we have going on. For example, this particular one falls very close to Easter. So we're going to be doing a lot of effort with our Easter egg hunt, and this one's fairly close to Easter. So it depends. I guess it depends on what the board's thinking about, and then I could answer the like if it's a level 3, absolutely yes, no question. If it's a level 1, you know, depending on what the idea is, we can probably do that as a part of our normal work schedules. If it is a level 3, we'd have to have a discussion with the board about, you know, adding some more dollars for staff, or, you know, trading out one event for another, but kind of depends on the scope that the board is interested in.
I mean, I think it's great to honor it, and we used to participate with the city and the chamber when they did those events. But I wouldn't want us to go into something where we took on a big one-day event. There's something we can do on a level 1, recognizing Earth Day. Maybe it's a presentation on Zoom on how we take care of the trees, or something like that.
Okay, and if the board heads there, I think the staff has some suggestions on that, but I need to hear what level, I guess, or what effort the board's looking at making toward this Earth Day effort. Yep.
Josh, what were you thinking?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. So while I'd like a larger event in the future, I think both with COVID and we've got just about 2 months until Earth Day, I don't think it's a good use of resources to dive into a level 3. And like, I think there's a possibility, which probably takes level 1 to level 2, where you kind of do a few different level 1 things, or you do kind of piecemeal projects that you can present, you can bring out there, different interactive aspects that take it to a level 2, but it's smaller, broken down objects. And I do have some thoughts, but I'm also interested in what staff came up with and opinions. But I also think if level 1 in this year's event goes really well, post-COVID, I think it'd be clearly there used to be some community interest in the event, and I think there's a way to rekindle that. And yeah, I think we can do
Any
that.
other board members? Kate, I see you reaching to unmute.
Yeah, I would tend to echo what Josh said. I think given that with COVID and stuff, and we've only got 2 months to plan, I think keeping with level 1 or 2 is good. I was also wondering, I know Dan said that the city and the chamber have not done anything with the past year or two. Is that, are they thinking of doing anything this year? Do you know? Does anyone know?
I don't think they're planning anything from what I know. Yeah.
I was going to suggest if they were joining forces, but I guess that'll have to wait till next
So
year.
what happened is, I know when they had it at the mall, there was a lot of work was set up and a lot of people participating, but it seemed like the public wasn't participating. I mean, there were more people there that were putting on the event than people came to the event. So maybe that was the reason.
That could be. Okay.
I mean, I would also throw out there, I think some of that can be marketing, how you present it, who you pitch to, and the things you're doing and asking people to do. I think that can completely change people's interest level. Yeah.
So I brought this to our attention because the city, the way they done Earth Day meets the needs of many members of the public, but sometimes, like, I'm thinking if it's a mall parking lot and you tell me it's Earth Day and there's vendors, I'm thinking it's like, go find out about buying things. And that's could be a part of it. But the way that we celebrate Earth Day is a statement of our values, like as a park district. And just as I mentioned before, sometimes we come up with the ideas, but the details the staff fills us in on. So here's some of my values or ideas, and then I'll listen up for some of the suggestions from the staff members. I wanted to celebrate the mission of Earth Day, which is sustainability, understanding our planet better. So if we did an Earth Day event and it was just get outside, it's Earth Day. That's a part of it because it's a part of understand the earth. But I would like it to be something where there's an idea or a theme specific to maybe this year. And I don't mean 2021, but I just mean each year, like we have a vision where, Dan, I hear what you're saying about the different levels. Well, this might come in under level 1. We're not choosing to educate everything about Earth Day, but hey, for this year in Earth Day, we're celebrating 2 things, 1 plant and 1 animal from our local biome. So come find out about something in nature locally. And there's a lot of different ways we could do that. But the value there is we're finding out about nature locally. There's something for this year, maybe we don't do an event or we don't want to plan an event not knowing what we're going to be allowed to do by then. So not wanting to waste time with that. It could be something we could distribute to do. So for example, this year for Earth Day, let's plant something together as a city. So we could pass out some flower seeds to plant. But as a part of that, it's back to that theme of sustainability. So like, what role does that have? So if we do pick up a packet of flowers, then it's going to be, well, these flowers grow naturally, locally, and they're important to our local environment because. So that's our part of educating about our local resources. And then, Dan, I know this might come up later, but we have trail maps coming soon. Where would that fit in with Earth Day possibly, like the timeline for that?
I don't know. We were planning to bring the trail maps to the board and kick them off and show the board, and then also a certificate of appreciation for the gentleman, Mike Kuhn, did a lot of work on that for us. So we were planning on bringing that to the board. I hadn't thought about the trail map relative to Earth Day specifically, but we could certainly do that.
So, but would that be too big of a rush on our timeline if we did an event where we said, come pick up a trail map?
No, I think they're all done and they'll be ready by then.
Okay, so as a part of the event, it still needs to be, Earth Day is more than go outside, but it could be for Earth Day this year, come pick up a trail map. And if you feel like it, go for a hike and clean up the environment, go pick up some trash. Now, I'm not saying staff has to direct it, hand out trash bags, point them in the direction of the trash and do all those details, but it could be, here's your trail map. And we encourage you to get outside and celebrate Earth Day. And I like partnering with the city or the chamber for the future. Like if the city or the chamber brings it back in some part, and that's good. I just want it to be, if we had a booth and we're the park district for Earth Day, that we teach them something or give them something of value of Earth Day specific to us as a park district. So that means our local environment, our local animals, our local plants, or our local trails. You know, if it's just Earth Day, come pick up a recycled water bottle. Okay, that's good. It's not bad, but that's not specific to the park district. Like, why are we at the fair? Like, what value do we add to it? So if we did that, and then it's only somewhat related, but our kiosk, I'll bring this up at a different board meeting. I know that we have requirements for our kiosk that are trailheads, and our requirement includes safety. Like, don't leave valuables in your car, or there could be rattlesnakes in this area or mountain lions, so pay attention. Bring water with you when you go for a hike, all that. But most of the signs on our kiosk are, they're more like warning signs. It's like, welcome to nature, watch out. Versus welcome to nature, of course, you gotta be careful, but also here's what you're gonna go look at. So maybe also our new, our hiking maps, maybe some of those are stapled behind it, so they stay behind it, so when you get to it, you can see the new maps. Those are pretty cool. I'm interested in what the suggestions were from the staff members.
Yeah, Laura, if you so if I could just summarize real quick, what I'm hearing is potentially a level 1 activity this year, and then I'm hearing that we want it more central to the park district's role in Earth Day, kind of our component of it, not necessarily some of the broader components of Earth Day. So that's what I'm hearing is kind of consensus right now. So with that, I'll turn it over to Laura and have her go through a few ideas the staff had at that level 1 kind of approach.
Okay. All right. Considering the level 1 approach, Brian, we did have an idea for an Earth Day. I don't know if you've checked out earthday.org. They do have an Earth challenge that you can do, almost similar to the Bio Blitz that we had for pollinators, where they're going out and using this mobile app to collect information again. for regarding air quality, water, anything of that sort. So it's another type of platform that we can use, and then obviously inform people. And they also do the science projects as well. So if you want to look up earthday.org, that was one thing we're looking at. We've thought about doing another virtual run, whether it's down the Arroyo or anything of that sort. I'm getting people together. That's obviously virtual at this point. We could spearhead it, but then obviously, again, do it where they can register online and then participate on their own time. Another idea was a poetry competition where described to us why Earth Day matters to you. And then we thought maybe the board could decide on who the winner would be and get a top 3. Another one is also a scavenger hunt, COVID-friendly scavenger hunt, where they're identifying, going to parks and identifying key landmarks, and then obviously getting something of an incentive at the end. Another one was an Earth Day logo contest that came up as an idea as well. So once we start rolling and after post-COVID, we'll have an Earth Day logo for our future event and have a contest as well for that. We did have, but it's more of a level 2. If we were to cut it down, we could do we're focusing more on the elementary side, where again, we're giving out planting seed packets of some sort from K to 6. We're thinking hopefully get the school district involved and gardening supplies. I don't know if Busy Hand Gardening Club can help us out. I know Wayne has good contact with them as well. So there were some key ideas there for you that will be on a level 1 status.
I move that we do them all.
Well, as Josh said, we could technically do these things and stack them. These ones we could do in a 2-week, 3-week basis and get them out there.
Oh, so you're saying we could do maybe multiples of those, but although we're celebrating Earth Day, it doesn't have to be on a specific day.
Correct.
Huh. Okay. I really like that poetry contest idea.
Yes, that was something that I came across too. And I know City of Santa Barbara is doing something similar as well.
I really like the scavenger hunt, and that's what I mean by allowing staff to come up with ideas for the details. So that moves me towards my goal of we celebrate and understand our local biome. So we need landmarks, that's good. But we can say, here's certain plants. And then we could have like a sentence or two why that plant's important. Go take a picture with that plant. So this oak tree can host up to 400 species. Go take a picture with the oak tree. You know, something like that where they're learning about their environment as they're doing it. And the scavenger hunt part sounds fun because with almost any restrictions, people could do a scavenger hunt. So that's good.
You can also tier the scavenger hunt so you have easier things so that K through 6 can still participate, but then you can have levels of additional, more difficult riddles and other things so that you could entertain adults as well, or just torture them.
I agree. I think the scavenger hunt would get families involved and probably create more interest.
That would. That might be a good place to start a scavenger hunt.
It's funny you say that because Kelly and I were actually doing our own little mini scavenger hunt at Rancho Taco today, trying to put the story walk in. So that might be something we could do based on, and it's an app that she discovered. So we're trying to figure that out. So maybe we'll incorporate that into the scavenger hunt.
I think something that gets them outside and in the park. Something that gets them outside and in the park. Yeah.
Yes.
I had another kind of suggestion. I'm not sure how we would do it. Maybe Laura or other staff have thoughts too. I really like the idea of kind of DIY stuff that we could promote or we could talk about. And my thought behind that was keeping it local too, of talking about, is my audio awful? Is that me?
You're good.
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I'm hearing a feedback. Is plants that are local, but also plants or projects that are indigenous that can attract butterflies, bees, hummingbirds, and other indigenous animals. And there's also, I know, Brian, I think it was 2 years ago, you and I talked a little bit about carbon sinks and how you can do them in your backyard. That's probably a next level up from most DIY stuff. But I think there's some really interesting things we could talk about, or educational about what things are local, which things could you do in your backyard or plants. And that could be part of planting too, but something that people can do themselves. They can do it as a family, but they don't necessarily even have to leave their homes. They can order things ahead of time. And it's just informational too. It's kind of the same thing of like, hey, you want to update your light bulbs from some point in the last 15, 20 years because they're more efficient, they save energy, and things like that.
Josh, you mentioned something I told you that you could do in your backyard, but I missed what you said.
Oh, no. You and I, several years ago, had a conversation about carbon sinks. You talked about you have butterfly sanctuary habitat.
Yes.
Plants, you have plants that incentivize that. And when we had that conversation, I talked about carbon sinks, which you can do along a brick wall in your backyard that are very helpful to the local environment and air quality and other things. But it's not as pretty, but.
Laura, I like the idea of a scavenger hunt, and we could possibly do that with a trail map idea. Like on Earth Day, come pick up a trail map, meet at this trail, and go do your scavenger hunt. And I know we have a lot of trails, so we don't need to do it at one trail. We can say meet us at one of these trails, and so that we don't put this all on staff to do that. If all the instructions are clear and all they need is a map, I'm sure board members could stand at the trailhead, some of us on that day, and hand out maps in the morning. I like the idea of stacking it so we can do multiple things. And that Earth Day citizen science idea, I'd really like to see that happen. And maybe the best way to do that is with our after school clubs. Okay. So for Earth Day, we celebrate it. The after school clubs get to do it. And then we share with the community some of the things the after school clubs did. Like some of the pictures of what they went out and found out using that citizen science, earthday.org, air quality report idea. Any other comments from board members?
We could
Dan, you're on mute.
We could do a poetry contest and a scavenger hunt. I mean,
oh, that's true. I forgot the poetry contest. I like that idea. And I know that if I feel like we could do it in two ways. One is we could have our after school club staff members work with the kids in our program to write poetry. And then we can also open it up to the public and send it to the local schools to do it too if they choose to participate. But I know like kids might need a little bit of guidance to get started.
Mm-hmm.
Dan?
Sure, if I could. So I've heard 7 or 8 ideas. Sounds like you're proposing a scavenger hunt, potentially with the new trail map tied into it, the Earth Day science, and I heard and the poetry contest. I would ask Laura if we could handle those 3 things stacked or some sort of variation of those 3.
Yes, we could.
Okay, and then I would ask the board if we have some consensus on those 3 items. And then from there, we can take 2 steps. We can either just take the direction from this meeting with those 3 ideas and staff could roll it out. We can obviously take individual suggestions from board members, or we could put that together and bring it back to the board for review. Either one is good.
I'm good with going with those ideas and seeing where the staff can go with it as proposed, those 3 ideas.
So Ed, do you mean to bring it back to us or to go with it?
Just go with it, I think.
I personally don't think they need to bring it back. I think they're capable of putting something together that we'd like.
I'm okay with it, and it seems like if a board member has an idea, we could, we can always individually speak with staff as well.
Right.
Yeah.
The last part is our medallion hunt is very popular. I never found that medallion. I spent a lot of time before I was on the board trying to find that medallion. And one of the reasons is because it's a challenge, and another reason there's a prize attached. I'm not asking that we put a big budget behind prizes, but maybe we could think of an Earth Day prize like Josh, what you mentioned earlier about pollinator gardens. Win some pollinator-friendly plants. Something very low dollar, but for the scavenger hunt, the poetry contest, something like that. But
okay, I'd ask if the board's okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
That's fine.
And then I'm fine with staff not coming back to us with the details, as Ed mentioned. and just carrying it out.
Yeah, I
And
think
as a part of that, I do want to give staff flexibility. If one of these things they want to alter slightly from what we mentioned, they don't need to come back to us to say the poetry contest is now an acrostic poem instead of a haiku. That's good.
Yeah.
We're not going to require you to come back with minor alterations to any of these things.
I'm good with that.
We all good with that? Josh?
Oh, I do want to add for staff, I would encourage for some of the smaller ideas or other things that it could be part of the social media campaign leading up to Earth Day after our other activities of like talking about earthday.org. There's also a carbon footprint calculator. There's all sorts of lead ups to it that we can get people excited about the content of it, still fulfilling the mission and advertising our different activities.
So that adds, what Josh is suggesting would be, we have the stacked events of the 3 that we mentioned, and a few social media posts that staff could put together about the importance of Earth Day and a variety of actions people could take.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I just want to confirm, Dan and Laura, this is all doable. There's no question about that.
Laura?
Yes, we can do this as long as it's at this minimal level, yes.
Because it's not been in our plan. So this is kind of over and above what we've talked about before.
Yeah. If it's something that we're stacking, like Josh is saying, yes, we can definitely do that.
And 2 out of the 3 events involve our after school clubs where we already have staff. So that's an activity that we're asking them to join in.
Okay, so I think with that consensus direction, I don't think we need to vote. I think we have consensus direction from the board and we'll roll that program out for Earth Day. I'd like to mention too, we've also got the recognition nomination period and recognizing those in the community or staff that have made a contribution to the environment and Earth Day as well. So
that brings us with any other comments before we move on? That brings us to approval of award of contract for the Oak Canyon Community Park Caretakers Residence Replacement Project.
Chair Dennert, members of the board, on September 16, 2020, the Board of Directors authorized the purchase of the Cavco West Industries modular mobile home as a replacement for the caretakers residence that burned down in Oak Park as part of the Woolsey fire. Concurrently, the board authorized staff to solicit bids for the infrastructure improvements and basic site improvements for the Oak Canyon Community Park caretakers residents at that meeting. Staff posted a notice inviting bids on December 13, 2020. We received 6 bids out of the 9 contractors that picked up bid packages for the project on January 26, 2021. The low bidder for the project is JTech Corporation from Westlake Village, California. As you might recall, JTech is also the ones that were awarded the Maid Boyer Playground renovation project 2 board meetings ago. Staff is confident in JTech's abilities to complete this project in conformance with the plans and specifications in the amount of $62,500. Staff is requesting that the board allow a $10,000 contingency onto the project for changes or change orders to the project, which brings the construction total up to $72,500. I got to mention to the board that all of these expenses are covered under our insurance for the Woolsey fire. So there should be no direct costs or anything that affects the district budget in association with this project. And at this time, staff is requesting that the board authorize a contract to JTech Corporation in the amount of $62,500 and authorize the district manager to execute the agreement on behalf of the Park District and to change the project for contingencies in amount not exceeding $10,000 for extra work or for modifications to the contract. And I'm able here to answer any questions that you may have.
It's going to go questions from board members, but not extended discussion, public comment, and then we'll discuss it more.
No.
Are there any questions from board members?
No.
Then public comment. Is there anybody on this call that would like to comment on this item? Not seeing any. Board members, do you have any questions, any other questions or discussion about it?
I'll move approval.
I will second.
That was Elaine with the, and then Kate. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
That brings us to the next item of new business, approval for the purchase of Showmaster mobile stage for outdoor concerts and events.
Thank you, Chair Danner and board. Just a brief background and overview. I know this has been something that we've been discussing for some time. You're aware that we have a mobile stage that we've been using. It's about 50 years old now, a Wenger Showmobile as they call it. It's in fair condition, actually to the point now where we can no longer use it due to age and mostly the maintenance costs and deterioration that's happening with this particular Showmobile. The stage right now that we have been using has been used extensively for a lot of different activities and events, not just our own, but for other activities outside of our park district, at least about 12 to 15 times a year, and it is growing. Staff has researched several options, and we have found that the Century Industries one, MSM 3200 Showmaster, is the best choice for the replacement. Century Industries participates in CMAS pricing as well, so we're hopefully getting the best quote here. The unit itself that we're looking at is 14 feet by 32 feet. The unit that we have before is about 37 feet, if you want to consider that. The additional accessories desired to facilitate the variety of the uses of this stage. The total base price for this unit right now is $128,406, which does not include sales tax or delivery. Allowing for sales tax and delivery and registration, however, the aggregate purchase price would be an estimated $143,000 into 215. The adequate funds to purchase the mobile stage has been earmarked in the district's approved budget for the 2021 fiscal year under the Simi Valley Assessment Funds in the amount of $150,000. We're requesting the board's approval and authorization for staff to purchase the Century Industries Showmaster with the issuance of a purchase order. And attached to the board report also is the quote that we received. If you have any questions, please let me know.
We're going to go with questions from board members and then public comment. Any questions?
I do.
Ed?
Right. So I don't have any problem with the fact that we need a new stage. That's clear. I guess my question is this for Dan or Laura, whoever wants to answer. I know last year when I was chair of the board, I discouraged having this item on the agenda because of the COVID and the COVID restrictions, and it was clear that there really wasn't going to be any use for it, and then to spend money on top of that just seemed to not make sense. Are we at a point now where we? I guess my question is, what is the likelihood that we expect that this will be used soon, and that we're not just making a purchase for something that's just going to sit there?
I can tell you right now, I have 3 requests already from 3 different organizations. So they're willing to rent it out and work through us to use it. We told them obviously the other one was decommissioned, as we call it, because of the extreme measures that the legs have started falling off and everything of that sort. But I have 3 right now, I can tell you.
Are those 3, are those events that are within the current legal restrictions and events that clearly will take place?
One is currently within those bounds and 2 others are not, according to the current purple tier.
If I could comment, I'd just like to add, again, we're not sure when we're going to be able to open, but with this and the lead time on ordering it, I'd like to be prepared to open. If we hold off on this, ordering this Showmobile, and then we are able to open, we won't be in a position to have the concerts or we can have them, but we'll have to rent a stage and use the staff time and all of those things. So there is an alternative, Ed. We could rent a stage for some of these events. Some of the service clubs would need to rent stages. My understanding, it's about $2,500 to $2,500 to $3,000 to rent a stage for an event. So I'm looking at this as not quite sure if we're going to be able to use it real soon, but at the same time, I'd like to be prepared so that when we do open, we're off and running with community events.
We're going to go to public comment and then we'll have a discussion. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this issue? Not seeing any, then it's going to go to board member discussion. I have a question about the rental fees. When we purchase it and we rent it out, what is our goal with establishing the level of the rental fee? Like, are we trying to just cover our cost, make a profit? Can you tell me about the rental fee when we rent it to service clubs or other groups?
The rental fees for the service club is, it's not really to make a profit per se on the stage that we had before. The costs were pretty low to rent, but it did cost us in staff hours and trying to get that particular stage up and it beyond what was needed in the servicing of that stage. So this one in particular will alleviate a lot of the staff costs that were associated with the older stage. We hope, obviously, with all the amount of people that are even coming through right now with COVID and the ones that we've had in the past, will hopefully offset some of the costs that are coming, obviously, for the purchase price of this one. And people have been requesting several times the lead time alone for this particular stage would take about 3 to 4 months to get. So like Dan was saying, we need to think ahead. And obviously there is a community need. This would be pretty much the only mobile stage that we would have in the city. So, and there is a high request for it.
My next question is in the board report, it refers to a banner that goes across the front, like across the stage. Would that be with our logo or with our name on it?
Yeah, we have the option of putting our logo on the back side of it, or it could be on the front side where the cover comes down. So we have the option of doing that later.
Okay, and then my next question is, at this point, I know that we can't predict the future for sure, but what's our plan for concerts in the park and the stage for this summer?
We had, we researched a few quotes to see what it would cost for a particular stage, just obviously a standalone with a backside or a wall. And it was about $20,000 or $2,000 to rent it just for that day. But it would have to be put down and taken back up the same day.
I guess my question was, if it's allowed for us to have concerts in the park, would anything stop us from doing it? As in, would we say we haven't planned enough for it? Like we're allowed to, but we didn't know we were going to be allowed to. So if the county and the state says we're allowed to, what's our plan so far to do it?
Danielle can probably answer that for you.
Yes, so because our event got canceled last year, we actually just postponed the bands to this year. So we haven't developed the contract with them, but we did work with our agent. So the bands are kind of in a standby mode. We did give them the dates of transfer when we had the postponement. So we didn't treat it as a cancellation last year with regard to our bands, but we did treat it just as a kind of a carryover to this year. But we are monitoring, of course, the county efforts to see whether or not it'll be feasible. But we do believe that we could pull the efforts together relatively quickly.
Okay. And my last question is, it's a suggestion that maybe you'll be a part of this or a different night, but if we're going to buy this stage and we're going to have concerts in the park, there's not that many places for young people to have a concert, a house party. That I'm not saying the concert in the park, which is the big act of the night, but if the stage is already being brought out, that maybe an hour or two before we allow high school bands or young bands to have like an opening act. So I know that's not on the very specific to the agenda of purchasing a stage, but my hope would be if we're purchasing an expensive stage to serve the community, that maybe we'll incorporate them not into the big act. We don't take away from the theme of the night, but maybe a little bit earlier, get there early. The stage is already there anyways.
So Brian, we did actually one year do kind of a band that went on ahead before the headliner, but we do have to discuss with the band kind of the back line. I'm not exactly sure how that all works with their equipment and sound checks and stuff, but that's definitely something we could consider, or having them in a separate location.
Yeah, I get it. Like the big headliners want to set up and people are there to see them. So just an idea.
We can certainly explore that though.
Okay. Are there any other questions about purchasing?
I do.
I see Josh.
By the way, I was actually at that one where there was an opening band, but let me ask this question. Let me phrase it this way. Let's assume hypothetically we're past the legal restrictions set by the state in terms of having events. We're back to having concerts in the park and other events. What, on an annual basis, how often do we expect to use the stage, number one? And number two, is the stage going to be used more by us as a district, or is it going to be rented out more? If I can get some idea of the amount of usage that we would expect during the course of a calendar year. Anybody?
I can answer that.
Go ahead, Laura.
Okay. Yeah, obviously we would get priority with all of our events that we have. We could easily use it with at least nine of our events that we have, and the rest, about 3 or 4 during the time when we were using the other stage. That would be pretty much the things of like a chamber street fair. They were using it, the chili cook-off that was happening over at St. Rose, those type of events. And the 4th of July concert was also when it was used in collaboration with the city and then also the chamber. So otherwise, a majority of the time it will be us using it. But yeah, if we did have anybody else using it, it's about 3 or 4 other entities right now.
So I would guess
that's Kate and Josh.
I would say that's about 20 times a year in total between us and the community, probably is what it's being used right now. I was aware that I think the school district used it a couple times, the city used it a couple of times, and then some of the nonprofits and the community groups have used it a few times a year for their events.
All right, thanks to both of you.
Chair Dinner, it seems to me that we certainly got our money's worth out of the used one that we bought years and years ago and has been a problem. And we are fulfilling a community need in addition to our need. And if we get as many years of use out of this new one as we did the used one, then I think it's really a good investment for the district. Part of our community, and it's needed in our community. So I think
Dan has a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to elaborate, I think, on where Ed's headed. So if we're using it 18 to 20 times a year and all of us have to rent another stage, that's about $40,000 a year in stage rentals. And we do try to recover the cost from the outside groups that are using it. So while you can look at it as a $140 cost, it's a cost avoidance for having to rent a stage. And the ROI on that would be about 3 years and less if when we do rent it out, we recover some nominal fee for those outside groups to use it. So from that perspective, it should pay itself back in 4 years or so, 3, 4, 5 years, the cost of this based on avoiding having to rent stages and collecting fees from those that use it.
well, it's just the logistics of running a stage, setting it up, having to get it down within the same day. I mean, just the logistics makes it more difficult.
Right.
To put on our event.
I understand now it takes about, because of the condition of the current one, we put out of the front of the stage, there's platforms and you put up stakes. And all of the hydraulics are broken on the current stage. So I'm understanding it was taking us 4 or 5 hours of 2 or 3 people to set the stage up. I imagine with this new stage and the hydraulics and everything working, that time for setup will be cut considerably. So theoretically, our staff would have more time to be doing their other responsibilities in the parks rather than setting up the stage.
Josh, what were you going to say?
My question has basically been answered. I was asking about ROI, and since this is a service, I was curious about ROI. But
we did budget this item. I would point that out. It's a budgeted item.
Oh, yeah.
Kate, were you going to say something?
No, I was just thinking that we really got our money's worth out of the last one. And if we're using this if it's being used 18 to 20 times a year, that means, like you say, 3 or 4 years before it's paid for, we've recovered the cost, especially if we're renting it out. So it seems like a decent investment, and we have the money set aside here for it too.
This question might be more for Wayne, but where are we going to park it?
Oh, what is that? Where are we parking the current one?
Well, no. since this one is 32 feet long instead of the, I think it's 36 feet for the old one, I think we might park it here at the activity center in the back. The alternative location is the equestrian center. And we do have a caretaker resident there, so it would be secured there too. But either location.
That speaks to the value of it. And the reason I was asking about where we're going to park it is one way we could provide a place for high school bands to play is let them be an opening act. Another way is if it's already parked someplace, we don't have to transport it. If it's easier to set up, then maybe our parking lot might be a place where occasionally they do a high school concert. Was there any other questions, or do we have a motion on the staff's recommendation?
I'll move staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I believe that was 5-0. We've all voted in favor, correct? That is it for that item of the agenda, which brings us to written communications of note.
Staff has no written communications of note.
That brings us to reports by board members. We're going to go with Josh, and then Elaine, and then Ed, and then Kate. Josh?
Sure. Thank you. So I last week spent roughly half a day with staff. So I do want to thank Teresa, Wayne, Laura, and your departments for taking the time to do that with me. I appreciated the tour that Wayne put together and getting to walk around and meet maintenance staff in different parts. I appreciated that they took my request to maintain social distance, and we did Zoom calls wherever possible. It was entertaining meeting someone I haven't seen since the 5th grade who's employed by the park district. That was a pleasant surprise to see him again. Teresa, I do apologize that we just ran out of time. But I am still getting together some questions that I had for you and staff to follow up on discussions we were already having. And then I know with recreation, we were all over the place, but I do want to bring up, we did discuss how to make better use of the Veterans Plaza and talking about highlighting local veteran stories, and also potentially reaching out to Medal of Honor recipients on highlighting their stories, bringing them into the community. Obviously, some of that is post-COVID for guest speakers or finding other avenues of doing that, but is using that space, I think, and it may not turn out this way, but I was excited by the concept and excited kind of mimicking it in the avenue of the Ronald Reagan Library, kind of having a guest museum once a month or whatever their period is, where they highlight something different to bring people back, was to kind of highlight those stories and have, and doing it outside of Veterans Day or Memorial Day weekend, where there's already community events, there's already that highlight of trying to do our own thing outside of that, that we can still show deference and respect and kind of highlight that space, highlight those individuals, and then also continue to build partnerships with the VFW. Yeah, I had all sorts of conversations, got to talk with staff a little bit about filming in the area. I know there's plenty more conversations to have on that. And we also talked about social media and pushing that out. Yeah. I know I'm forgetting something, probably quite a few things, but yeah, that will, thank you staff for all your time. I appreciated the effort and the thoughtfulness you put into those meetings. I appreciated that greatly. Yeah, and I look forward to talking to you more. Thank you.
I have the golf committee, which you'll be with Director Avila, which you'll be hearing more about. And that was it in terms of the meeting. And I would like to thank Sandy for putting the flyer together for the historical park fundraising effort for the new book. She did a great job, and I wanted to thank her for that. That's it.
I believe I said Ed.
Okay. Thanks, Chair Dennert. Right, so just a couple of things. First, the golf committee meeting. I'm gonna just be really brief on this, but my ongoing rant about committee meetings, I get why we have, the Oak Park Advisory Committee. I get why we have Strathern Historical Park. The need for ad hoc committees such as choosing our next director of recreation, and certainly informational type ad hoc committees like the Special Needs Committee. Those all make a lot of sense to me. In terms of the golf committee meeting, basically the things that we discussed were golf rates and capital projects, and those are things that just belong in front of the entire board. Again, I didn't let it get to the point where we gave a recommendation, because then it would be two people making the decision for five essentially. But even so, to me, that particular committee meeting was something, that's all stuff that could have gone directly to the entire board. But that's just my ongoing rant. My biggest concern about the meeting, I have to mention, and I think Chair Dennert brought this up maybe at the last meeting, but a recent meeting, I do believe we need to consistently, given that committee meetings are a fact of life for us, and as I say, some of them are useful and need to exist, especially where we deal with people outside of the park board. But whatever the reason, we have committee meetings. These are Brown Act meetings. These are meetings that are supposed to be open to the public. I have to say, in all candor, being an elected official, I wasn't comfortable with the way our golf committee meeting took place. And this leads me to the suggestion that we have these committee meetings on Zoom for the time being. We met at the Birdie Bar at the golf course inside the Birdie Bar. And there wasn't anybody from the outside that was clamoring to be part of the meeting, but they don't have to be clamoring to be part of the meeting to become part of the meeting. There was really no way that a member of the public, if they wanted to attend that meeting, which was supposed to be a meeting open to the public, would have been able to do that, because it was inside. It would have essentially been in violation of restrictions. And to me, it just seems like going forward, when we do have the need for committee meetings, my other rant aside, that under current conditions, we need, I think Zoom is necessary for the meetings, because to me, that was borderline whether that was a true public committee meeting that took place. So now, on a brighter note, I have to say, we weren't discussing park district business, but even though I feel like I'm an expert on a lot of our parks, and I go to a lot of our parks, there's one I hadn't been to in 4 or 5 years, I think, since I applied for the position on the board. But Director Dennert and I walked around Challenger Park, and I have to say, I have to admit, he is much more the expert on Challenger Park than I am. There were things I wouldn't have even remembered or noticed before. And my favorite part of the whole thing, though, and anybody who knows me knows I'm not exactly an expert on trees. It's not my thing or anything like that. But Brian takes me up to a tree. I don't know what we're doing there. I'm staring straight ahead, and then I realize what we're doing there. And it was the neatest part of the whole thing. And it goes back to Brian's previous quote on Martin Luther King. But we are at a point in society, and even in our community, where it does pay to get along. It does pay to be there for each other. And the tree where there were the painted rocks, and Brian explained to me, the whole concept is, I believe it's hide a rock, take a rock. And as Brian pointed out, the cool thing was there was actually probably more people hiding rocks than taking them, because there were a lot of painted rocks there. And so we got into a discussion about painted rocks. It's probably more than I thought I'd ever speak about them. But I really appreciate Brian's knowledge of the park, the fact that I actually figured out why we went up to this particular tree. And I really enjoyed that. I do have to mention one thing. Earlier that day, I had gone for, I go for a run about 3 or 4 times a week, usually at Rancho Santa Susana Park. And I had done a lengthy run that day. I'd walked both of my dogs that day. And toward the end of our visit at Challenger Park, we were coming up to a steep part of the trail. And Brian goes, I still have a lot of time on my hands. And I'm thinking, man, I don't really want to be doing this. And so I just said, I really do have to get home to Jill. It wasn't entirely true. It was kind of true. I wanted to get home to Jill. But so anyway, that was really enjoyable. And I appreciate Brian's insight on a lot of Challenger Parks. I'm probably going to be going back there soon now that I will have more of an appreciation for it. So thank you for that.
I believe that brings us to Kate.
Yes, okay. I just had 2 meetings. I had the community action in Ventura County up in Oxnard, and just a basic update on all of our programs that we do for low-income people, and the evaluation of the new executive director, who has been on maternity leave. Of course, we're all Zooming anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. It doesn't make a difference. A couple of the staff workers at the head offices were tested positive for coronavirus, so it was shut down for a couple of days, but they're now reopened. So that's good. I also had the special needs ad hoc committee meeting, the first one with Chair Dennert, and I'm glad we're doing this. It's basically going to be, I think, entirely public input driven, because we are obviously complying with all the ADA requirements now. And there's levels 2 and 3, which are like voluntary or input from suggestions from the public, and also things we voluntarily decide to do. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. So I'm looking forward to the next meeting on that. And that's all I had.
I was obviously in that same committee meeting, and Kate agreed to be the chair of our People with Special Needs Committee. And I look forward to public input. As Ed mentioned earlier, online meetings are right now required so that public could participate, since they can't come to a crowded room. But going forward, my thought is maybe we continue. Now, I don't mean for board members and staff, but even when we go forward through coronavirus, maybe the public could join the beginning of a meeting online. We're all in person, but they could join and say what they need to say. Like we saw some of the people today, they had busy lives, but they're able to join. And maybe we'll be able to do that for committees and board meetings, and that would be a good way for the public to participate. I wanted to know more about that story walk. I saw a social media post about story walk, and I'm excited. And Laura, I think you had mentioned it earlier, so that might be you. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, when's it coming out? What is that?
Yeah, it's going to be an actual kids or storybook that if Kelly wants to jump in, I know she's listening. We went over to Rancho Tapo this morning to figure out where we're going to place the story. And its intention is to get people out into the parks to read the story. There will be a QR code on there as well at the very end as you reach to the end of the story, and then take you right back to information regarding the park district. The story walk is supposed to be mobile. You're supposed to be able to take it out. They're actually the real pages from the books, and we just laminate them because you can't, because of copyright issues, copy books. So they are the real books. We will transfer those over to Oak Park, and then we'll create a new story walk at another location. So the intention is to start putting them in actually tomorrow morning. We thought about doing it today, but they were cutting the grass and then the wind was howling.
So is our plan to do it at those 2 parks and then rotate to other parks, or just those 2?
Yep, it'll be rotated. It won't be at one park yet.
I look forward to that. And then there was an agenda item that Elaine had suggested before about the skate park. And Elaine, I know that it wasn't on this meeting, but I remember that you did ask for that to be on the agenda. So we'll put that down for a future meeting.
Or a report back on just a report back would be fine too.
Okay. So it could be just a discussion item in a future meeting.
Yeah.
You're on mute.
Just a report
We
back.
have that scheduled for the March 18th meeting.
Okay. This could be for Wayne, but Wayne, a member of the disc golf community contacted me. A T-pad at Sycamore Park. It appears that a large construction vehicle drove over the T-pad. And I know the construction of those T-pads, they weren't going to hold up to a large truck, but they sent me a picture of the truck, and I don't think it was a Park District truck. Have you heard anything about this?
Yes, I also got those photographs. I don't think it was the truck that they photographed. If you look at it carefully, the tires are completely clean and shiny. It didn't drive over our mud hole and dirt.
Okay.
That was an asphalt truck that you saw in the picture. I believe it was a construction truck that was associated with some household repair near our park site. In any case, the short story is I'm going to have our maintenance department re-pour that piece of concrete out there.
Okay. And then Wayne, when the first concrete was laid, somebody had carved into it at Sycamore Park, a few different things. And I'm not gonna bring it up at the meeting, but how easy is it for us to grind something out of cement like that? Like somebody just wrote something on it.
We grind it out.
Okay. I know that there's a long list of maintenance, so somewhere on that long list, there's a few things to be ground out there. I'll talk to you later about.
Okay.
Any of you are welcome, including staff and fellow board members, to just call me Brian. I'm not the most formal person, and I'm totally comfortable with that. I look forward to the Historical Society. I know that they're working on some events. I just got my ID card or my membership card. And if you join, you support their efforts, and they do some good stuff. And Elaine mentioned earlier, they're having a fundraiser for releasing another book, and I look forward to that. Lastly, I was thinking of an idea, and I'm sensitive to what Dan said about staff time, graffiti removal. So mentioning that, I know that we constantly do this, but there's members of our public that are waiting to be called upon to volunteer to go remove graffiti. They want to volunteer to do lots of things, but in our parks, there's just random graffiti here and there. And I could guess how to remove graffiti, but there might be some direction we want to give to the public. So what I was thinking of, we could do this as a agenda item at a future meeting, but what if it was like this, something like this? We do a Zoom meeting, find out about how to remove graffiti. We have one of the maintenance people just run through it real quick, like, hey, if it's on a rock, use this type of paint. Or if it's over here, there's this other material that makes it better. So we can ask people to help us in removing graffiti, but also instruct them on the best practices for it. And then maybe give them a small kit, like, here's your goo remover, here's your gel, here's your spray paint of a neutral color, of a couple of random colors, or something like that. Wayne, what are your quick thoughts on that? Like, should I do that as a?
We can supply what's called graffiti wipes to the general public. A lot of the other graffiti removal stuff is quite expensive. To put kits together would cost the district an enormous amount of money. But if they wanted to do like marking pen removal and basic spray paint removal on hard surfaces, we can supply graffiti wipes to the public or to volunteers that are trained to remove that stuff.
And then sometimes it's just cover up where you paint over it.
Yes. Painting is another topic to cover graffiti. We have multiple colors of paints that we use depending upon which park site you're at. I really don't want the public painting a tan wall green just to cover up the graffiti. That would defeat the purpose. I'd leave the painting to our staff. I would leave the heavy acid removal to our staff, but basic graffiti removal on plastic, metal surfaces, or our picnic tables can be done by volunteers with graffiti wipes.
Wayne, how much of a ask from the staff am I doing if I say, could we have a Zoom meeting where we train the public on the things they can do?
We can do that.
Okay. I'll follow up with that later, so it's not a discussion that we're doing now, but it doesn't sound like I need a board meeting, but agenda item. That's it for me, for my board report. So that brings us on the agenda to report by district manager.
Thank you, Chair. I have quite a few items to go through. I'll go through them quickly, and then obviously if any of you have questions on them, feel free to ask. Wayne did put together a beekeeping permit and application, and we've completed that, and that'll be available on the website. If the board will recall, they allowed us to, or we are allowing more beekeeping in our open space in certain areas where it's allowed. So we've got a packet together with conditions for that reflect the board's direction, and we're ready to roll for anybody that wants to take us up on that offer. With the Woolsey fire, if you recall, staff had a protocol for storm watch, and there were certain thresholds of rainfall per hour. And we had a team of rangers and maintenance staff on call, depending on those thresholds as rain events occurred. I'm happy to report that the Woolsey fire is out of the storm watch arena, and it's back to normal according to County Office of Emergency Services. So that's good. I did follow up with Edison on the letter we wrote them. Director Gray had asked about that. They acknowledged receipt of the letter, but I have not gotten a formal response back yet. So I will double check with them on that. The skate park, and we can talk a little bit more about this, but the unruly behavior has ramped up. We've had some incidents out there over the past week. In fact, we've had actually the past 30 days vandalism out there in the restroom with graffiti, and then we had an altercation with our rangers. The police department came, and I believe a young gentleman was arrested during that event. As it relates to that, Teresa and Jim, Chief Rosales, and I met today, and once again, we put together a plan to be responsive and be on site more. It's the same group. It's a group that aren't necessarily the skate crowd, so to speak. That crowd is, or the skaters are behaving and treating the park with respect and following rules. It's more of a group of folks that like to be around the skate park and around those kids. And it's a group of about 30 kids that are causing trouble. So we've got a plan in place to try to tackle that again. And hope that'll be a 2-week plan to disperse that crowd and make sure that they're following park rules. We are picking up our marketing effort. The staff's been working heavy on that. You'll start to see some of that stuff roll out. The special needs committee, I just wanted to comment for the balance of the board that didn't attend. Our next step we decided is we need to educate ourselves on what we currently are doing before we talk about what we're not doing. So we're going to talk about what we're doing as a district, and then some of our community partners that are meeting the community need for special needs and programming. We're going to hear from them and kind of get a feel for what we are doing, and then we can bring the public in and have a discussion about what our unmet needs are and what role the park district may have in that. Obviously, anything that comes out of that committee will be coming to the full board before any action is taken. I'll be meeting with 3 new members of the Oak Park Committee tomorrow to orient them to their committee. So I'll be doing that tomorrow. The Oak Canyon Community Park Cleanup Project that the board heard about and there was concern about, Wayne has put together a plan. We may need, I hate to say it, Ed, but we may need to have a special meeting to review that plan with the entire committee. I've heard from them, they want to make sure that they're involved with that. The alternative is either to wait till April, their next committee, to do that and run that by them and get their buy-in, or to have a special meeting before then so we can get the work done sooner. So I wouldn't imagine that would need to be a meeting that the board liaisons would need to attend, but I'm going to ask them. Obviously, I'd like to wait until April, our regular meeting schedule, but if we want to get corrections to that going quicker, we may need to have just a brief 1-item topic special meeting with them. The Zoom meetings, Brian, our district counsel, Mr. Pierrick, has put together a legal analysis relative to looking forward to Zoom. As the board's aware, we had the Brown Act requirements pre-COVID. The governor put in some emergency Brown Act requirements and basically lifted a lot of the public meeting requirements, allowing us to do certain things during the COVID period. But he's also looked at if we went back to a period where the Brown Act was in place, even if they didn't list it, we're still allowed to do meetings and take comment via Zoom. So for board members, what that means, if the board members attend via Zoom under current or under the previous Brown Act requirements or what's in place, the board members could attend via Zoom, but wherever the board member is, it has to be noticed and you have to let the public into that, allow them to be in there. So that's relative to the board members. Relative to public comment, the public, we can still offer Zoom if the public, if we want to take comment from a Zoom. I'd ask Mr. Perrick to comment on that as soon as I conclude my report, if he has anything different on that. But that's good news. I mean, it's not as restrictive as we might have thought it was after we get out of the COVID period. We're working on the Apollo Field. Staff has got an agreement drafted with the group, the primary user there, and that discussion has gone very well. They're very appreciative. We pledged them some storage space. That's the SEMI Youth Soccer Group. And I think we've come to terms on what the fees are going to be out there, and everything's moving well with that. I did want to note the county made a reach out for vaccine volunteers, meaning once they start the larger population and vaccine sites, they were looking for volunteers. We did coordinate with them, the County Office of Emergency Services, and to date, they've said they have enough volunteers in place, but we were ready to step up and help them staff their vaccine sites. But as of now, they think they're staffed in preparation for that. A few more items here. I met with the NFL flag football group in town. Some of you may be familiar with them. The Pews, very nice folks, volunteers, and putting it into the community. Was interesting to me, they have 320 kids participating in that flag football program. So I was surprised that it was that high. So we talked a little bit about field space and availability for them and where we're headed in the future. Very complimentary of the district. It was a very nice meeting. Learned a little bit more about the district and what some of our plans are. And I learned a little bit more about their sports league. So, but 320 kids are involved in the NFL flag football league. So we did, I believe it was Director Dennert asked us to improve or enhance our ability to get a hold of rangers in off hours and actually in on hours. Teresa Pennington and Jim have worked on that, and we have basically a seamless transition from our on-call operator directly to a ranger that's on duty. So that improvement has been made. We'll be putting that out on the district's website fairly soon. Follow up from Josh, there's all kinds of trash next to Mayfair Park, which is right next to the freeway. That is actually Caltrans right away. There's a chain link fence there. Wayne and I are in the process of getting on Caltrans to clean that trash up. We could go do it. One, access for us is an issue. Secondly, we don't really want to get in the habit of cleaning up other people's responsibility. And thirdly, there's safety issues with us and our crews working right next to the freeway. So our approach at this point is to get on Caltrans to come out and clean that area up. We'll keep you updated on that. Couple more items. Wi-Fi. I did send out a notice. Mr. Dennert had asked us, Brian had asked us to give him an update on Wi-Fi. We sent that to the board. I wanted to report the city is now running what they call a safe park program, and it's not a parks and recreation park. It's a place where if you are sleeping in your car and you don't have a place to live, you can park in a safe place at one of the local churches overnight, and you can sleep there. It's coordinated by the Samaritan Center in association with one of the churches. Our rangers have flyers and they have the information on that. So as they encounter folks in our parks that may be sleeping in their cars or in their motorhomes or other things, we're directing them to the city's new Safe Park program. So I did meet with Rotary this morning, See Me Sunrise. Nothing but really good things to say about the district. I did want to note that they were very happy that we're able to keep things open, and I told them that the direction of the board was to do that, and all the comments were very complimentary of the board and the job that this district does. And then finally, a couple upcoming meetings. We've got some of the items that are calendared. These may move around a little bit, but March 4th is the train depot agreement. Golf fees will be here at our next meeting on March 4th. And we're gonna bring an item on one-wheelers, which is a type of electronic skateboard, but we're gonna bring back, we're gonna see if the board wants to allow those in our parks. And if we do, we'll bring back an ordinance on that. March 18th, we've got the skate plaza, the concrete dirt issue there. We're going to present the emergency action plan. I think Director O'Brien was interested in that and had previously directed that. So we'll just give a presentation to the board on that. And then the trail guide we're planning to roll out then. So that's your next couple meetings. Like I said, we will the normal historical society will be scheduling another special needs meeting to get to learn about, what we are doing to meet the special needs. And then finally, we may have an Oak Park Committee special meeting. And if we do any of those, we'll certainly send the agendas to the board. That completes my rather lengthy comments this evening. Apologize.
Are there any questions for the district manager on his report?
Yes,
Josh?
I have a question.
Elaine, Josh?
When you meet tomorrow with the 3 new people from Oak Park,
Yes.
does that include a budget review, or will that be done separately?
No, that includes a budget review. Yes.
Okay,
Yep. I'll get him up to speed on the finances tomorrow.
how it's structured and how
Yep.
we do things. Good, thank you.
Yes. Yep.
Josh?
That's good. No, I also wanted to follow up, Dan. Thank you for following up on the SCE thing. I know last time we met, or the time before, you mentioned that you were also co-authoring a letter with the city and schools, or that there was potential for that. I was curious if your follow-up included that, if the other 2 entities had, if the 3 of you had written that letter, if that was continuing, if that's
Yes,
scrubbed.
that letter went out last week. The board was actually copied on that, and I think the city took the lead in distributing it. So they should be getting you copies. If not, I'll make sure you get copies for your boxes. But the 3 of us, the superintendent of schools, the city manager, and myself, co-authored a letter to the CEO of Edison, more directed at, when the power goes off, how does it impact each of our agencies, and requesting that they acknowledge that and do a better coordinated job on these public safety power shutoffs. So I will get a copy of that to the board so you have it.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, at a future meeting, I would like to know more about when one person continues to cause problems at a park, what enforcement strategies do we have? In addition to, obviously I know we could give them a ticket, but I'm thinking specifically at the skate plaza, there's a group of people that they don't seem to be skateboarders, but they're causing problems and making it harder for skateboarders.
Yes.
So in researching that, I just want to know, like, can we use it? And I want to know, should we use it? Like if someone continues to cause minor issues at the skate park, but over and over,
yeah,
we say you're banned from the skate park.
Yeah.
Maybe not not every park, but just the skate park.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. If these encounters continue to be repetitive and it's the same individuals, I'm briefly aware of the law on that. There's a pretty high standard for banning people from public places. I've been involved in it with libraries where you get rambunctious folks, maybe in a public library. So I believe the standard's pretty high, but I'll work with Mr. Pierrick, and we'll look at what we can do on the terms of continual unruly folks and how we can potentially deal with that. So.
And then you're meeting with the new Oak Park advisory members. Is that where or how? It's funny to say where, but where or how are you doing that?
We're doing it outside at the community center because I have some budget numbers and other materials to share with them. So I believe the staff out there set us up a place outside of the Oak Park Community Center, and we have 2 large tables, so we'd be spreading out over there, 4 of us.
And then that brings me to Brian, I know was going to update us, but Brian, I think, I don't want to speak for Ed. Ed, you'll correct me if you want to add more to this, but our question about the Brown Act and Zoom was, can we accept public comment on it? That's the biggest part, is we want the public to be able to participate, possibly using Zoom in the future, when not required to, but could we just keep doing Zoom for the public? Like, could the public join in? And is that was that what you were driving at with your question?
Well, yeah, actually, my point was that actually, I am curious about that. I do want to know about that. But my point was, with the golf committee meeting, we didn't incorporate Zoom at all. And I know right now, under the current restrictions, we could have. And I felt like we weren't really having a public meeting. And
all future committee meetings will be on Zoom. So any future committee meetings will make available via Zoom.
But I am curious as to the answer to your question too, Brian.
Brian's is separate. So Ed was talking about specific to our committee meetings and making sure that those available to the public via Zoom. We'll do that. The one I was referencing was after COVID, the board had talked about what does the structure of our meetings look like, whether the board's in person or whether the public's in person or via Zoom. So Brian, I think we had talked about that. Ed had talked about it at the last meeting. Brian did the legal research on that, and I was speaking to that. And maybe Brian can expand on what's allowed, post-COVID under the existing Brown Act.
Well, I'm going to do actually two things. One is to observe that that it is possible that there could be either orders from the governor or perhaps state legislation that post-COVID might allow certain practices that have become common during COVID that are convenient and more transparent and make public comment, increasing the opportunity for that. So in the absence of legislation that would impact attendance of meetings by board members or public comments, we would return to the pre-COVID Brown Act rules that were suspended during COVID with regard to attendance by board members. And what that means is that board members could attend meetings by Zoom, and there's certain rules that would apply. It's provided that a quorum of the board must participate from locations within the district. So it's possible to have, if there's a board member who is out of town, they could participate by Zoom, but a majority must be within the jurisdictional boundaries of the district. And every location where each board member is located must be open to the public. The agenda must be posted at each location. The agenda that is posted by the district, your usual agenda, is going to need to indicate the location for each person who is participating remotely, so that a member of the public could appear there if they chose to. It may be that that's not going to be a big issue, because if you're going to allow public comment via Zoom, a member of the public may choose to participate via Zoom rather than to go to the physical location where a board member is located and participate
Brian,
in that location. Yes.
Ask one question. So that means if it returned to those rules, for example, if Brian Dennert was at home on Zoom, the public could all raid Brian Dennert's house and attend the meeting there.
Well, I don't know if raid is the right word, but they could go to, I know. They could go to his house.
Brian, my understanding is I've seen board members do this when they travel out of state and they post that they're going to be in a hotel lobby if anyone wants to join them.
Well, yes.
But my question is less about that, because I'm looking forward to, we can have meetings in person with staff and all the board. I'm asking specifically, the public just wants to give a quick input like they did at the beginning tonight. Do we allow them to do that under the pre-COVID rules? Could we have allowed them to do that using Zoom?
Yes.
Like nothing in the Brown Act says the public has to attend in person, does it?
You can allow public comment by Zoom, but you're not required to.
Okay. That's my goal, is that the public can participate by the least inconvenient way possible for them.
Understood. So
Yeah.
those are the rules on attendance at the meetings by board members, and Chair Dennert has, or excuse me, Brian, has observed that public could participate via Zoom, and as I've said, that is you can allow it, but you're not required to. But I would caveat all of this by saying, stay tuned for further announcements, because we may see some legislation possibly later this year as things hopefully start to return to normal, whenever that might be, that may impact some of the answers I've given you tonight.
Dan?
Yeah, I did want to comment, if it's different than this subject, but on the subject of fee waivers, I wanted to know that all of our spaces, even though we may not be having games, they're being actively used by all the different sports leagues. I was up at the particular site that was subject tonight, and that place is really busy and being used. I wanted to know that all of those other leagues have agreed to pay for the fees. I wanted to remind the board that we didn't increase the fees. We have been increasing those at about $150 a year per field because of the cost of doing business. This year, the board approved those contracts without increases, to acknowledge that a bit. Also to Director Abelo's point, we're down $4 million in revenue ourselves. So to the extent, and now to the extent we waive it for one league, and it's not only baseball and softball, it's all the soccer groups that are using our fields, which are hourly fees. So with that, just some perspective on the other side of the issue. Also, I would, if any of you are interested in agendizing that, I'd appreciate an opportunity I have some more perspective on that as well. But if any of you are interested in agendizing that, I'd like to have a conversation with you individually if I could.
Dan, is that the end of your report?
Yes.
That brings us to closed session, and there is no closed session. That's correct. That brings us to the adjournment of the meeting. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good
night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.